So, as Scott mentioned, he said the term's kind of a slow year on diseases, more or less, sounds like it was a good production year. So I think I'm doing my job, right? That's how I should take this? Okay. So I was asked to talk today, I got this, like most times, talk about small grain diseases, and then often the more popular subject in the last couple of years is spraying and fungicide. What do I expect from them? So I'm gonna break this down into two parts. One, I'm gonna cover both spring wheat and barley. Just kind of give you a review of the diseases that we commonly see, maybe some of the ones I'm most worried about. And then the majority of the presentation, I'm gonna show you fungicide response data. I'm not gonna talk about what fungicides work on which diseases. It's gonna be more or less of what can you expect from the yield response. How can you interpret that? Instead of calling me and saying, should I spray a fungicide? Am I gonna get a return on investments? I will say, it depends. And we're gonna talk about why I say it depends.
Yeah.
So to begin the top, I'm just gonna give you an idea of what this wheat disease looked like in the state of North Dakota in the past 2 years. Each year we have scouts, will go visit fields, and they'll give us reports of what do we see in the field for wheat diseases. So for the past 2 years, what I'm showing you is the percentage of fields that have this disease. Meaning that if you see the claims in the field, you check the box. And everything's based on a percentage. We look at the 5 diseases: sand spot, bacterial leaf streak, leaf rust, Bavarian head blight, and verdigris. This is what I would call low disease years. If you want to think about on trend lines as far as what the diseases look like, the biggest dip in disease incidence that we're seeing is your sand spot. It's been drastically reduced the last 4 to 5 years. I'll go into that in a little bit. Where I'd say it's been pretty stable for other diseases, and that's probably to be expected. I will jump into each one of these here in the next few slides. The other thing I want to bring up from 2023 is this more of something that we noticed with more stem rust reports. Disease that we're familiar with historically in the state, but not something that we're used to seeing on, right? You see it in one field, okay, you start seeing it in several fields, you start scratching your head. And most of that is likely due to a susceptible variety that was on the market last year. To give you the next couple of slides of my interpretation of diseases, I'm just going to show you what it looks like. Jim gave you a whole bunch of really pretty looking wheat pictures. I do the exact opposite. I was for the really ugly wheat pictures, just to show you what it looks like, how it survives, and then a few little tidbits on why I think we're not seeing as much disease. First one, tan spot. Our number one fungal leaf spot disease in terms of commonality. It is a residue-borne disease, meaning that all of our maximum comes from last year's wheat residue. I mentioned that we're starting to see less of it in the state. A couple of reasons why. Weather, of course. June is a big time for tan spot to take off. We've been relatively dry. We haven't had the dew periods. Most of the dew periods seem to be coming around for July. We're not seeing as much, favorable conditions. The other thing is, I mentioned this residue-borne disease. By just rotating 1 year out of wheat, you will reduce your tan spot 50%. Rotate 2 years away from it, it goes up to 80–90%. Already using that management tool. The other thing that we use. Does everybody still spray a fungicide or first herbicide class? Right? Now we're coming a complete management plan. That is a large reason why we don't see as much clean spot anymore. Also, if you have any type of tillage or residue management practices, significantly reducing the disease. And the key point I want to mention is that we have multiple management tools for this disease and we're using them. Okay, let's switch to contrast one that we do not have management tools for. Bacterial leaf streak. Predominantly a flaking disease, obviously it takes off. We have several susceptible varieties on the market. One question I get asked is how does it survive? Primarily it's seed-borne. We know it's in the seed and it's carried in the seed. The one good thing is that has a low transmission rate. So think about for every 100 seeds you put in the ground, if you have enough bacteria, one might carry it into the next year. Problem is if you're putting 1.4, 1.5 million seeds in the ground, you start adding up the potential food that can carry it. We do have resistant varieties. They do definitely help as far as managing yield off. But if we want to talk about the disease that I'm most worried about, are the ones that are incomplete management. Bacterial leaf streak is that one disease. Because right now, all the management tools we got for it is when that seed goes in the ground. That's it. You don't have anything we can spray on it. There's nothing, no intervention in season. It's all based on the genetics right now. Grouping rust diseases together And this is the point I want to bring across with rust diseases. We haven't seen a lot of rust diseases probably since 2015, 2016. And a couple of reasons why. This pathogen sits in the south. It hangs off the south. And we're dependent on the southerly winds, rainstorms, the southerly wind curves that bring the spores up north. We have a good prediction system, and they're known as Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota. When I start seeing rust due north, I look at our current crop, and most of the time, we're gonna outrage any type of rust damage. The other thing we have for rust diseases is we have a lot of really good genetic resistance out there. So that's why we don't really see a lot of rust diseases. Last thing I want to remind people about preserving pest life. I will say this over and over again, probably is a pessimistic viewpoint, but we will never give anything there and pest life on the table. And we'll never be able to completely manage it. Let Mother Nature decide to take care of it. Things with preserved pest life, residue borne, logs, corn residues. Number one helps for it. The other thing is the love relative humidity. The 2 points of that relative humidity factor or viewpoints. Think 2 weeks before heading and the week during heading into flower. That's your risk level. If you have dry, mildew, type of weather, a lot of times we escape that infection. Last year, our greatest amount of scab risk was actually in southwest North Dakota. Reason why? They started getting rain every week, about an inch. And it's consecutively started building up this risk. Up in this area, little to no scab risk. Maybe a little flare up in rain through July, really not a problem because there's weather shifts. Okay, let's jump into barley diseases. Again, you're going to see a similar trend. Using the same type of data, the same type of mindset of what we do for barley diseases in the state, you're going to see it still relatively low. Okay, we have some fungal leaf spots in the complex. We have bacterial leaf streak too in barley. We also have the very peptide. Some of the big drivers of this, weather was a big one, but you're going to see some of the same mentality why we start to see less pressure from diseases. Fungal leaf spots, I call this a complex. You can send me a barley leaf disease photo, and if you ask me earlier this evening which one it is, let's say it's one of these 3. The reason why I say that is extremely difficult to separate. It's a good thing if we manage them all the same way. So if you're fungicides, crop rotation, think of this as the sisters of sand spot in the weed world. Anything that we do for sand spot management, also going to work for this one. The thing is that the barley and weed diseases often don't overlap, right? So that's like a key differentiation. The other thing too is like in our wheat crop, we're using fungicides, and in some cases we do have more susceptible holes, but later on you'll see is why we can definitely have a system to manage fungal leaf spot and barley. We are starting to get a little bit more bacterial leaf streak in barley. If you want to think of what's the difference between bacterial leaf streak and barley versus wheat, it's actually what I call it as a different pathogen that's causing it. And the other thing, what I'm noticing in barley, which is different in wheat, is I see this disease set in early in barley, and once that flag leaf comes out, it kind of feathers out. Whereas in wheat, the opposite is you don't see much damage until that flag leaf comes out, and that's where we see exclusively all the damage in bacterial issues in wheat. Something that we're working aggressively in our department trying to unravel this, but for any barley producers out there, if you start seeing some of the water stroke, pretty ugly looking leaves about canopy, chances are it's going to be bacterial leaf. Same mindset though, if it's still a seed for you to do. And again, I'm just going up barley if you're there. That's why same path system that we see in wheat. The only thing that we're targeting here is the heading stage of barley. This comes into importance for fungicide management, which I'll be talking in extension. Okay. I call that my review material, just to let you know that I do still take a lot of photos and still actively looking for disease. We're in this group here, we're definitely what I call it, give me that management update. So the title was fungicide expectations. But here are my 3 general rules. The reason why we use fungicides, first and foremost, we manage the disease. So this is your what to spray and when to spray. That's the best way that we use fungicides today. The other 2 things that are more or less the product of using fungicide, we're protecting quality, but specifically for preserving pest like the vomitoxin, down the valley, bomb and down the elevator. And then you can protect yields. I'm highlighting protect yields Because I call it pet peeve of mine, I can never increase yield with the fungicide. There's no such thing. That's a genetic basis. I'm trying to protect that level of genetic space with the fungicide. Okay? And this will come into conversations here explaining weeds in a lower disease here. Okay. So those are the three things. I might mention this 3 times. By the 3rd time, it might stick, right? Is that kind of the rule of thumb when we think about it? You hear it 3 times, remember the one thing. If you want weed fungicide efficacy information, what works well, what's the disease, this is our best resource we have in the USA. Shut the Crop Protection Network website, QR code up there if you're interested. But it's simply known as the weed fungicide efficacy table. That will give us our ratings for each fungicide on specific diseases. Not going to bore that. We have a lot of fungicide in the market, and I can take it 3 hours to get through one. Okay, so it's typically time us to see from the phone drop. Thanks, done. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'll help you. I should still talk. It's fine. Oh, see, I wait and it works out. Let me know if it doesn't work. I can get it to you in a different way too at the end. But the best way you can Google it too is this type in weed fungicide efficacy table has all that information for you. What I really want to talk about is how do we combine the timing and variety to help looking at what to expect from a fungicide in the diverse weed environment we have in Southern Florida. So I'm going to first cover some barley data, foliar fungicide data, then some larger wheat foliar fungicide data, and I'm going to end the whole talk on the scatter fungicide application. Probably the one area that we have the most amount of research right now in the program. So the first thing we talk about barley fungicide. So for spraying barley fungicide, a lot of my research program has gone into spraying programs, more or less spraying on multiple varieties, on fungicide by variety, multiple location. What I'm singling out here is a 2020 study. And the key thing I want you to remember, we use 2 varieties, they differ in resistance susceptibility. We just have, I just pick a fungicide program, herbicide timing, the very headlight timing, and then the combination of the 2. And in this case, it's a very high disease pressure environment across both locations. So what am I trying to tell you from this type of study? Well, first thing is I want to talk about disease severity. Remember the first thing I said is why we use fungicides? We manage disease. If we manage that disease, we are able to protect our yield. So if we want to look at what is the value of fungicide and different programming, here on the clinical varieties, clinicals are very susceptible, barley varieties, and you get quite a bit of disease throughout the season. And in this case, we see that fungicides are working. In some cases, you see that for strong application late may not have quite as much. And that makes sense to me. Depending on how that disease is moving into the canopy, sometimes it can be too late for single fungicide. But if you have that dual system or that 2-pass system, that is how you can really stay ahead of the game in a lot of cases. Again, I did not mention this, but we did have a little bit of scattering trial. The idea is what kind of thing home is one, we do have specific varieties, and your response on the variety of fungicide is going to differ. Let's look at the genesis. Or disease you're starting out with, add more resistance, still getting a reduction in severity. Like you're moving what I call not starting behind the 8 ball, you're moving ahead. And you look at the terms of resistance and the variety, it's all about where am I starting at with disease risk? And then how can I use the fungicide if I need to lower that disease risk even more? Barley right now is a perfect example of that. We use for variety. So what are the yield ramifications from the same study? We can see some pretty large influences. If you look on the more susceptible varieties, you generally see a larger yield response, meaning that you have to protect more green leaf area to help support photosynthetic process. The more resistance you have, a little bit less yield response. I'm not calling it insignificant, but if you have any other terms, it's a 20% difference, that might be on a susceptible variety. If you throw resistance in my qualification, it might be a 10% difference. Don't mean a lot. It just kind of remember it all depends on what you're comparing. So, like I said, go back to the first question. I say it depends. These are 2 parts of variety, disease risk, and oftentimes what your production is, right? This is also going to vary by environment. To give this another perspective, let's jump into wheat. Now, with wheat, I have a much larger data set, and so I showed you 2, 3 locations that I combined. This is going to be a much longer term line. I went back to 2008 to 2021. look at all the Oreo fungicide trials we looked at with regards to the herbicide timing or the plague timing. And the beauty of this data set is now instead of things like 1 year with disease risk, I have 4 disease risk levels to start answering the question. If I spray, what can I expect from a yield response? Gives me a little bit better to like narrow in the value that I can get. So all the data set up, there's only the 2 times I'm looking at specifically, is I call the children of the herbicides count and plague, and then the data I'm presenting is percent yield response. So I'm taking all this data from all the tiers, categorizing it using these parameters. The parameters that I like using, your variety, for the whole thing, that's in previous crop, big input, because if you have residue border diseases. Some of the environmental parameters, the dew period, the rainfall, and then general disease observation. So you're going to see I go into very low, moderate, and high. That's just what everybody in this room needs to be able to relate to the terms low, moderate, and high, depending on the year. 2021, low disease. Last year, low disease year. 2019, quite a bit of disease, right? So that's how I want you to think in terms of trying to separate these data. So what did we find out? So the first thing I'm going to show you is what is that early season path. Herbicide path into the tank for fungicide. Here are my yield responses. When we don't have disease to protect against, our yield response is pretty low. When you put yourself in a more risky situation in terms of control rotation away from weeds, using susceptible varieties, you start to see a little bit more response to the environment. The reason why I'm highlighting these 2 productions, my biggest rationale reason why we're seeing this type of response, I do a lot with the previous crop. Here I'm going to show these works of just a simple crop rotation. You're reducing disease, but you're also kind of reducing yield application. That's okay, because in some cases you're growing multiple acres and trying to manage the disease for the purpose of trying to maintain the genetic potential of that variety. What about the flaking fungicide? I say it's the least popular fungicide, and we have to say it on the product. Some going to use it every year, some of you have never used it. Same mentality in these type of environments, very low to high. You're going to see a similar trend. Now, mostly going to look at the moderate high disease risk scenarios and wonder how can we generate that much. This is what happens during a rust year. 2015, 2016. We had strike flush occur early in the stage, it occurred early in my trial on susceptible varieties. We saw a large improvement, a large response in yield recovery. Typically, if you want to think about rust diseases in the last 6 years, this is probably on a disease list as far as the likely time occur. The other thing we got to consider that the first grain of the methylite, which could be as little as a week later, maybe 10 days later, you're starting to scab. You're also getting flagy cover, right? That fungicide just doesn't sit on the head of the plant. Gravity helps covers that flagy. It's called the interrepresentation of that very type of application. One thing that I didn't have in this data is I just kind of summarized all fungicides together. But what if you use a certain crack group? What if I use a triazone? What if I use a strobilurin? What if I use a combination? But here's my response on that. Let's look at the data. Look at all these low disease, the thing was training in a low disease direction. The only thing we're looking at is the chemistry. What is the chemistry influence on yield when it comes to just training a low disease here? I call it the significant yield difference, meaning that sometimes on average what we get, but it's about a 50% chance of the time you're going to see a yield response. So again, it goes back to that first question I wanted to mention that you're going to get a yield response when you have disease available, when you have such a big variety, and these larger yield expectations got to be related to what you're doing currently in the perception of disease risk. Okay, let's finish off with the dairy headline. Okay, we'll make like 8-9 minutes. 6 minutes. Okay, we can do this. I promise you. What I want to get across from the dairy headline, I want to reinforce the timing recommendations and then give you some of our updated data from the last couple of years. So to give you an idea, when I talk about the staff grounds, a much larger network, we have locations all across the state. Next year, we're gonna add locations in Carrington and down in Hennigan. My goal is we're gonna try to have every story you see put at least one stamp file on it. Gives us a local data, but also gives us these nice large data sets that we can work at. Right now, our current recommendation for spring weeks, when we're spraying for staff, starts at early flowering. And our window to make an application has now extended on the back end, meaning that you've got 7 days to make an application once the crop starts pollinating. You can certainly apply earlier. You get some suppression, but our greatest suppression has been at early flowering up to 7 days later. That is the window. Based off that recommendation, our last 2 years of trials have been focusing on the products that have been on the market or that were not on the market at the time. Compound, there face, sour, spirit. And then in the week, we look at early flowering, that late application, or in this trial, we did a 2-pass application, once early flowering, and coming back 5 to 7 days later. So basically, we're answering the question, how well these fungicides work, and what is that window of opportunity? And if I spray twice per step, can I get rid of it in my field? Simply how I can do it. What did we find out? So preventing the vomitoxin or the vomit levels we had in the files, just to give you a basis of comparison. Generally speaking, when somebody asks me what's the value of a good fungicide for scab, 50 to 60% suppression. Sometimes it might be 35, sometimes it might be 70. On average, for a good fungicide, 50 to 60% suppression. If we spray twice per scab, can we get rid of it? We can improve it a little bit, but we'll never get rid of it in a 2-pass system. Finally, if I just spray what might be considered too late in that 7-day window, meaning that if I miss early flowering, other nations that I couldn't get out there, but I sprayed 4 days later, that management level is holding, meaning that we have that window of opportunity to spray late. That is why I call that 7-day window. Okay, that's the big story. It's like we want to know that we have good fungicides, we're not silver bullets, but we also have known from the last couple of years, since I've been hired, that we have a 7-day window to make an application. That's a huge game changer when it comes to a lot of what used to be before. What about fire level? A little bit different. We're targeting full head, but the same mentality is holding true. We have a 7-day window to make that application of barley. The one thing I want to be a little critical in is not jump the gun in barley. Even if we start to see guns, wait, you need to head out there. Biggest reason why, fungicide coverage means everything. How to get full coverage when we have the flame protecting that head, and then you have the fungicide coverage. And fungicides are always great. If you get it on the yarn, it's not going to go fully down to the head. They don't move that way. So that's why quality is really important to make sure you have enough heads out there for that application. Similar protocol, similar setup, the only thing is the timing change. But here you're going to see what I call a similar story. Barley sometimes can be throw us a few curveballs, but generally speaking, it's 50 to 60% suppression. Still going to get maximum level. If you're spraying at 4 days and up to 7 days later, and then 2-pass system then at any stage, yes, there will be disease, it's not going to get rid of it. Okay. Final question I'm going to answer in 2.5 minutes, right? Okay. I got I keep asking for forgiveness and shout. The last thing I want to answer is the yield question from a very net life fungicide. Here I'm going back to the week ago. That's from our larger data set. And I'm bringing these 3 components up once again. This is kind of how I started. This whole topic on fungicide application. It's going to depend on your scab risk, levels of susceptibility in your variety, and finally, remember that the level of disease control is going to relate to the amount of managing the yield costs. Okay, so what did we find out? So I had a graduate student that was funded by the North Dakota Wheat Commission for several years in multi-application trials, all dryland environments. And the thing that we did is we looked at the fungicides of Pizarro, Roma, the highway, Spirit, Petroconazole, the foliar generic, and Neurosix. All these are sprayed at early flower, meaning that we never change the regimen when we spray it. We spray these on 2 varieties that have almost identical yield potential, but they differ in scab susceptibility. Think of it as a resistant and a susceptible one. What are the highlights in this trial? We had varied environments, couple locations, mentioned the 5-feet environments. And what we found out is that in a very high environment, so a lot of scab, disease severity on the head is close to 50% on susceptible, 50% on the resistant. Look at some yield differences within the variety. On that susceptible variety, it's already too modular. On the resistant, hey, fungicides are still doing their job, but in this case, I want you to look at is even where we're starting at with the goal of resistance on the scab, quite a bit of difference. They may, on average, with the fungicide, be able to get up to where we're starting at. So in one case, I think this is about an 18 bushel difference from high to low down to 8. Okay. What about a low environment? Maybe something similar to what we saw in 2022, maybe not so much 2023. Same varieties, different disease level. They yield response is a little bit less, but still significant. Still protecting, still getting yield. What about in a very low environment? Basically what I described last year. Here, when I mentioned that these two varieties have very similar yield potential, you take the elements of disease for the one thing that can really separate these varieties, you're looking at maybe a portion. So, if you ever have that question, what I'm going to give from a fungicide that's got a low disease environment, this is probably what I would expect. If you have a split scab and you're worried about it based off walking on the fields, being wet, and all the models stay low, you can use this. Then if you know if you're set up right against double plate, you know it's going to get nothing to be on this wonderful microclimate that it gives you, that's something you got to remember. With that, and coming off, it's a couple of thoughts or summary. I would love to see if there's any questions, any other scenarios, any other diseases that I failed to cover. All right, so the question pertains to bacterial leaf. I mentioned it comes on the seeds. The question was, is there anywhere you could test for it? And then the second one is basically what can we do, right? So seed treatment. You can certainly test for it on the seed. And we're currently trying to develop protocols at NDSU to do that. The biggest gap in this is just because you have it in the seed lot doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to be a problem in the field. So the next step that we're trying to decipher is how much you have in the seed lot, whether or not it's going to start in epidemics. I think we're getting close. I can't tell you how many years it might take, but we have the technology to do it. It's applying the technology is kind of where we're at. So if we're able to get that, and you talk about seed treatments, I think it was here and also in mine last year, we developed a seed treatment trial for bacterial leaf streak. We're able to generate it off seed in our field trials, and we looked at the treatments of we looked at bleach, we looked at thinking of like a copper hydroxide for like more like a top product, like streptomycin sulfate for anybody remember the driving days of doing that, and then we used UV rays. Think of something that could maybe sterilize it. Long story short, we cannot offset any of the damage. So the problem is because it's a bacteria, very difficult to manage. There's really nothing out there that just cures it, but we're looking for it. We're trying.